The second batch of Nigerians are expected back in the country from South Africa today. The return, which is triggered by recent xenophobic attacks on foreigners, is continuing even as President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, has apologized for the incidents which stirred outbursts on the continent. Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabiri Erewa, says more than 300 persons are expected to arrive today.
At the peak of xenophobic attacks on foreigners in South Africa, some Nigerians indicated willingness to return home, and the private airline Air Peace was glad to respond. So, at about 9:35 p.m. on the 11th of September, the first batch, 187 of them made up of adults and children, landed at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos.
Coming back, it's a new experience, so I'm happy. As I feel safe because normally even to go to school, like we're scared to go to school.
The car, I have the papers here. My car was one of the cars burned. With the whole situation, killing and looting shops and everything, I just decided, no, it's time to come back home.
It's a shame that in the African continent we still have a situation of blacks killing blacks. It's not something that any African should be proud of. I think it should be embarrassing to us all as Africans.
This evacuation and perhaps boycott of the recent World Economic Forum by a few countries may have sent a strong signal to the government of South Africa. Opposition elements in South Africa not keeping quiet too.
Xenophobia. The EFF government will have acted decisively because the attacks we have seen are not justifiable. It's an act of criminality. We must call them for what they are. It's crime.
While plans for the return of more are being tidied up, the envoy sent by the South African President, Cyril Ramaphosa, was in Abuja to meet President Muhammadu Buhari.
Those incidents do not represent what we stand for as a constitutional democracy in South Africa, and the President has apologized for these incidents. And he has also instructed law enforcement agencies to leave no stone unturned, that all those involved must be brought to book so that the rule of law must prevail in South Africa.
Maybe too little, too late. Minds are made up and may not be prepared for a rethink. Today, another batch is leaving South Africa, the country that was once home but turned dangerously hostile.
Well, the House of Representatives has resumed plenary after an 8-week recess. In the welcome address read by the Speaker of the House, Femi Gbajabiamila, he hailed South Africa for condemning the xenophobic attacks against other nationals of the African continent. The Speaker also commended the private airline for airlifting Nigerians out of South Africa free of charge. Mr. Gbajabiamila also says he's hopeful that the 9th National Assembly will pass the petroleum industry bill. Well, let's get fresh perspective now to the developments in South Africa and here as a fallout of the xenophobic attacks. Joining me via Skype to discuss this is a resident based in South Africa and a management consultant, Oscar Emetuei. Thank you very much for joining in the program at this time. Looking at the apology of President Ramaphosa of South Africa and the moves he's making, sending in envoys across the continent, even here in Nigeria, what do you make of that?
Yeah, you see, I would first of all thank you for having me in the program this afternoon. Like I did say the other time, this is just the best move that the president can actually do, or move as to kind of redeem the image of the country. Now, let's not mince words about this. This is a complete betrayal of the African brotherhood and a betrayal of trust. Now, this is not just about a particular group of people or nationality. This has a lot to do about the South African business environment. How safe are people and how trustworthy can any investor would want to know before they even invest. So it's not just about the nationality, but it's also affected. So the move that the president has actually made is in the right direction.
Absolutely. But then it's coming at a time when another batch of Nigerians are scheduled to return home. Is it likely to have any impact on this repatriation process?
Yes, you see, when the president of Nigeria actually offered to evacuate Nigerians who were willing to come back home, to me, that's not really like in a long-term solution, even though that was the right thing to do at that point in time. But I still believe that the two countries can dialogue. And what is the signal? That the message from the average Nigerian out there is they're no longer safe. It's not cool to live in a place you have stayed. Like some of them are interviewed. I've stayed for over 10, 15 years. Now, going back home, and the average South African, I chatted a lot yesterday, they do not really want foreigners to leave. But the thing is this is more of an economic dysfunctionality in the system. So rather than face their government, they're transferring aggression on innocent migrants in the country. So it comes across like a mixed feeling, but obviously this is going to have a dent in the relationship between the two countries. I don't see this to just be something that will be swept under the carpet. It's obviously going to have some kind of feeling and that doubt that you need to redeem yourself. So at this point, the government needs to do more.
Right. And Oscar,
okay.
And then what do you think may have, propelled the average Nigerian living in South Africa to heed this call by the Nigerian government to return home, bearing in mind that we still have many more Nigerians who chose to stay back? And again, if you look at the process of those who joined the last batch now, we heard that some of them had issues with their papers and all that. How would you describe these hundreds, this group of Nigerians returning home?
Now, I would say that yes, there are some that do actually have issues regarding documentation. That's true, and still there are still those who are properly documented. So again, it doesn't have to do has to do with just those with undocumented papers or documentation in the country, but still the environment is becoming hostile. Hostile in the sense that you see this kind of stereotype that a certain group of people or a certain nationality are being regarded as drug dealers, responsible for all forms of crime in the country. And like I always say, we're shifting blame, and as long as you keep pointing fingers and as long as you keep putting the blame out there, it's not going to solve the problem. Now, how do we solve problems? It's call crime a crime, and then deal with the issue as it is.
All right.
Now,
all right, Oscar. Oscar,
okay.
I'm afraid we've run out of time. Thank you very much for your contributions on TVC News.